The blue lights flashed across my rearview mirror as I pulled to the side of the road. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had done nothing wrong. Deputy Collins approached, face stern beneath his hat. "Step out of the vehicle, please." I complied, confusion turning to terror as he ordered me to place my hands on the hood. The metal burned hot under the summer sun. "We received an anonymous tip about your vehicle," he stated flatly, circling toward the trunk. The trunk popped open, my tools, parts, and a small plastic bag that did not belong to me. "Methamphetamine," Collins declared, holding it up. "That is a felony." "That is not mine," I whispered, voice cracking. "Someone put that there." Collins smirked slightly as he cuffed me. Over his shoulder, I spotted her, Sheriff Sheila, watching from her cruiser, satisfaction visible even behind her sunglasses. And that was when the terrible truth dawned on me. This was not random. This was planned. The sheriff had planted meth in my trunk. Before everything fell apart, I lived what most would call an unremarkable life. I owned Riverside Auto, the only mechanic shop in our town of Millfield. The place was not fancy. Concrete floors stained with decades of oil, walls lined with parts and tools, and the constant hum of compressors and classic rock radio. But it was mine, built from years of honest work and dedication. Every morning began the same way. I would arrive before sunrise, brew a pot of coffee in the small back office, and review the day's appointments. By 7, I would roll up the heavy garage doors to welcome the cool morning air and signal to the town that Riverside Auto was open for business. People trusted me with their vehicles because I had earned that trust one repair at a time. Millfield was the sort of place where everyone recognized your truck before they saw your face. We had one stoplight, 3 churches, and a diner where the breakfast special had not changed in 20 years. Life moved slowly here, which suited me perfectly. I fixed transmissions, replaced timing belts, and diagnosed mysterious rattles while my customers shared stories about their children or complained about the weather. I never aspired to wealth or fame. My ambitions extended only to paying my bills on time and perhaps taking a fishing trip once or twice a year. This simplicity gave me peace. No complications, no drama, just the satisfaction of honest work and the quiet respect of my neighbors. Even the local police were regular customers. Chief Davis had trusted me with department vehicles for almost a decade. That all changed when Chief Davis retired. The town council appointed Sheila Morrow as the new sheriff. She arrived with credentials from a larger department and promises of modernizing our small-town force. Her formal introduction at the town hall meeting left most people impressed. She spoke confidently about community policing and making Millfield safer, though I could not recall anyone feeling particularly unsafe before. Sheriff Sheila was striking, tall with perfect posture, always in a crisp uniform, her blonde hair pulled back severely. When she spoke, people listened. Her voice carried authority that commanded attention, and her smile appeared precisely calculated, professional but distant. Many welcomed her leadership, believing a fresh perspective would benefit our community. I first encountered her officially when she brought in a patrol car for service. While I worked, she inspected my shop with calculating eyes. She asked pointed questions about my business licenses, disposal protocols, and security measures. Her inquiries felt less like conversation and more like interrogation. "You have been here a long time," she observed, running a gloved finger along a shelf. "Some might say certain standards have become relaxed." Within weeks of her arrival, changes swept through Millfield. Deputies began conducting random vehicle inspections. Business owners received citations for violations that had never before warranted attention. The town bulletin board filled with new ordinances and regulations. People whispered about hefty fines for minor infractions. I watched from a distance as Sheriff Sheila established her dominance over Millfield. When Tom Wilson's hardware store received a violation for improper signage, I helped him adjust his storefront. When Martha Jenkins was ticketed for an expired tag, I reminded her to renew immediately. I believed that playing by the rules, even these new, stricter ones, would keep me safe. This was my strategy: remain invisible. Keep my head down, my paperwork perfect, and my business above reproach. I nodded politely when Sheriff Sheila passed me on the street. I complied immediately whenever her deputies visited my shop. I thought that by being irreproachable, I would avoid becoming a target. But invisibility provides no protection against someone who has already marked you. And I had no idea that Sheriff Sheila had already noticed me, not for what I had done, but for what I represented. Independence, respect, a connection to the community that she could never command, only control. I was about to learn that in Sheila's millfield, compliance was not enough. She demanded submission. The bell above my shop door jangled on a Tuesday afternoon. I slid out from under a Chevy Impala to see Sheriff Sheila standing in the entrance, sunlight silhouetting her uniform. Two deputies flanked her, hands resting casually on their belts. The garage fell silent as even the radio seemed to recognize the tension. "Good afternoon," she said, removing her sunglasses with deliberate slowness. "We are conducting vehicle inspections today." I stood, wiping grease from my hands with a shop rag. Vehicle inspections? I was not aware of any scheduled inspections. Her smile never reached her eyes. Random inspections do not come with advance notice. That would defeat the purpose. I nodded, maintaining a respectful demeanor despite the unease building in my stomach. Sheriff Sheila did not wait for further acknowledgement. She strode through my garage as if conducting an inventory, examining tools and equipment with exaggerated interest. "That truck outside, the blue Ford, that belongs to you, correct?" she asked, though I knew she already had the answer. "Yes, ma'am, that is my truck." She gestured to one of the deputies. "We will need to take a look at it." I followed them outside, watching as they circled my truck like predators. There was nothing illegal inside. I kept it clean and maintained, but the invasion felt personal. Sheriff Sheila opened the passenger door without asking permission. "Is there something specific you are looking for?" I inquired, trying to keep my voice level. She glanced at me, eyes narrowed slightly. "Just doing my job. You would not interfere with that, would you?" The deputy moved to the back of the truck and dropped the tailgate. He rifled through my toolbox while Sheriff Sheila opened the glove compartment, examining registration papers and maintenance records. "Your inspection sticker expires next month," she noted, closing the glove box with unnecessary force. "I am aware. I plan to renew it next week." She nodded, then walked to the back where the deputy was now examining under the truck bed liner. They exchanged whispers I could not hear. Sheriff Sheila then approached the truck cab again, leaning in for a longer look. Her movements seemed performative, as if following a script for an audience I could not see. After several minutes of this charade, she straightened and replaced her sunglasses. "Everything appears to be in order, for now." The emphasis on those last two words chilled me. She departed without further explanation, deputies in tow. I stood in my driveway long after their patrol cars disappeared, trying to understand what had just happened. Something about the encounter felt rehearsed, as if she had been looking for something specific. Or worse, ensuring something specific was now there. For the remainder of the week, I found myself checking my rearview mirror more frequently, tensing whenever a patrol car passed my shop. The rational part of me said I had nothing to fear. The instinctive part knew better. 7 days later, my instincts proved correct. I was driving to a parts supplier in the next county when flashing lights appeared behind me. I pulled over immediately, checking my speedometer. I had been driving exactly at the limit. Deputy Collins approached my window. I recognized him as one of the men who had accompanied Sheriff Sheila to my shop. "License and registration," he requested, voice flat. I provided the documents, asking, "Was I speeding, officer?" "Step out of the vehicle, please." "May I ask why?" His hand moved to rest on his holster. "Step out of the vehicle now." Heart racing, I complied. Collins directed me to stand by the guardrail while a second deputy, who had arrived in another patrol car, began searching my truck. They focused immediately on the trunk area as if they knew precisely where to look. "What is happening?" I asked, watching helplessly as they tore through my belongings. Collins ignored my question. The second deputy emerged from behind my truck, holding a small plastic bag containing crystalline powder. My blood ran cold. "That is not mine," I stated firmly, fear constricting my throat. Methamphetamine possession is a felony, Collins recited, already reaching for his handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. As he pressed me against the hood, securing the cold metal around my wrists, I caught sight of a third vehicle parked further down the road. Sheriff Sheila sat inside, watching the scene unfold. Our eyes met briefly before she drove away. The setup was complete. I had gone from respected business owner to alleged drug criminal in less than 10 minutes. And in that moment, I understood with perfect clarity this had been planned from the beginning. The inspection at my shop had not been random. It had been preparation. The county jail smelled of industrial cleaner and desperation. I sat on a metal bench in a holding cell, still wearing my work clothes, grease stains now complemented by fingerprint ink. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. This was not a place I had ever imagined myself. My single phone call went to Ray Jennings, the only lawyer in Millfield. His voicemail informed me he was out of the office until Monday. It was Friday evening. I would spend the weekend behind bars. The arraignment proved brief and bewildering. The judge, a severe woman who had never brought her car to my shop, looked down at me with dispassionate eyes as she read the charges. Possession with intent to distribute. The intent based purely on the quantity allegedly found in my trunk. Sheriff Sheila stood in the back of the courtroom, arms crossed, expression neutral yet somehow triumphant. "How do you plead?" the judge asked. "Not guilty, Your Honor," I replied, voice stronger than I felt. Bail was set at $15,000, nearly all the savings I had accumulated over years of careful living. By Monday afternoon, I was free, but free had acquired a new, conditional meaning. My reputation lay in tatters. The Millfield Gazette ran the story on the front page. Local business owner arrested in drug bust. The article quoted Sheriff Sheila extensively. This arrest demonstrates that no one is above the law in Millfield. Drug dealers can no longer hide behind respectable facades. I never sold drugs. I never used drugs. Yet overnight, I had become Millfield's most notorious criminal. The shop phone stopped ringing. Appointments were canceled with awkward messages left after business hours. People who had greeted me warmly for years now crossed the street to avoid passing me directly. Parents pulled their children closer when I approached. The whispers followed me everywhere, in the grocery store, at the gas station, even in church. I heard they found thousands of dollars worth. Always seemed too quiet. Those are the ones you have to watch. My cousin said he was supplying half the county. Each fabrication cut deeper than the last. A lifetime of integrity dismantled by a single planted bag. Sheriff Sheila capitalized on my downfall. She appeared on the regional news channel, standing proudly before her department, discussing her commitment to cleaning up the streets of Millfield. The camera loved her confidence, her conviction. Viewers would never suspect that the righteousness in her voice masked a calculated deception. "This arrest is just the beginning," she announced. "My department is dedicated to rooting out the criminal elements that have been allowed to operate unchecked for too long." The implications were clear. She was positioning herself as the savior Millfield had needed, rescuing us from corruption that had festered under previous leadership. My destruction was merely a stepping stone for her ambition. My attorney finally returned from his fishing trip, reviewing my case with obvious discomfort. "The evidence is compelling," he admitted reluctantly. "The search was conducted with reasonable suspicion based on an anonymous tip. The quantity suggests distribution rather than personal use." "It was planted," I insisted, leaning across his cluttered desk. "Sheriff Sheila orchestrated this entire thing." Ray sighed, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. "That is a serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" I did not. Only my word against hers, and in the current climate, my word carried little weight. Meanwhile, my business hemorrhaged money. Fixed costs continued while income evaporated. I worked alone in the empty garage, completing the few jobs remaining from customers brave enough or desperate enough to still bring their vehicles to me. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional sound of cars slowing as they passed, curiosity seekers hopping to glimpse the fallen mechanic. One afternoon, Sheriff Sheila herself drove by slowly patrol car creeping past my open bay doors. Our eyes met through her windshield. She did not wave or nod, but the corner of her mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile but an acknowledgement. A private communication between predator and prey. That night, unable to sleep, I researched similar cases online. What I discovered disturbed me deeply. Throughout the country, small-town police officers with unchecked authority had destroyed lives on fabricated charges. Some victims fought back and won. Others lost everything, their savings, their families, their freedom. As dawn broke, a realization crystallized in my mind. Sheriff Sheila had not selected me randomly. She had identified me as someone respected in the community, but without political connections or financial resources for a protracted legal battle. Someone whose fall from grace would generate maximum impact while encountering minimal resistance. But she had miscalculated one crucial factor. She thought breaking me would end her problem. Instead, it had created an adversary with nothing left to lose. If I was going down, I would not go quietly, and I strongly suspected I was not her first victim. 3 weeks after my arrest, my phone rang at 2:17 a.m. I had been staring at the ceiling anyway, sleep having become an elusive luxury. The caller ID showed unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but normal had ceased to exist in my life. "Hello," I answered, voice rough from disuse. Silence stretched for several seconds, then, "I cannot talk long." The male voice was hushed, nervous. "You do not know me, but I know what happened to you. You are not the first." I sat upright, fully alert. "Who is this?" "That does not matter. What matters is that Sheriff Sheila has done this before, many times." The caller identified himself only as a former deputy who had worked briefly under Sheriff Sheila before being quietly dismissed. He spoke quickly, as if racing against an invisible timer. "She targets people who do not fall in line, people who question her or refuse to play by her rules. Sometimes it is drugs, sometimes weapons, sometimes falsified reports. The method changes, but the pattern remains consistent." I grabbed a notepad, writing frantically as he continued. "Why are you telling me this?" A heavy sigh came through the receiver. "Because I stood by and watched it happen before. My silence made me complicit. I cannot live with that anymore." Before disconnecting, he provided 4 names, other victims of Sheriff Sheila's manipulations. The call lasted less than 5 minutes, but it changed everything. I was no longer alone. The first name was Alina Gaines, a school teacher who had lost her job after being accused of illegal prescription drug possession. Her case had made small headlines 6 months earlier in a neighboring county. Sheriff Sheila had been newly transferred there then. The second was Michael Thompson, a farmer whose property had been raided after anonymous tips suggested he was manufacturing explosives. The fertilizer compounds found in his barn, normal for agricultural use, had been portrayed as bomb-making materials. The third name belonged to Jason Reeves, a local businessman who had refused to contribute to Sheriff Sheila's department fundraiser. 2 weeks later, he was arrested for driving under the influence despite breathalyzer results that barely registered. The fourth and most devastating was the Martinez family. Carlos and Maria had lost custody of their children after drugs were supposedly found in their home during a welfare check. They were still fighting to regain custody, their savings depleted by legal fees. I spent days tracking down each person, approaching them cautiously. Alina had moved away, starting over in another state. Michael spoke to me only after I shared my own story, recognition dawning in his eyes. Jason initially slammed the door in my face, but later called to arrange a meeting at a diner 20 miles outside town. The Martinez family was the most difficult to reach and the most heartbreaking. Maria wept as she described officers finding packets of cocaine in their children's bedroom, a room that had been spotlessly clean minutes before the search. "We do not use drugs," Carlos insisted, hands trembling around his coffee cup. "We do not even drink alcohol, but who believes the word of immigrants against a sheriff?" Each conversation revealed the same pattern. Those who questioned, resisted, or simply existed as obstacles to Sheriff Sheila's authority became targets. Each setup was meticulously planned and flawlessly executed. Each victim was carefully selected, visible enough to serve as an example, but vulnerable enough to be discredited. I began documenting everything: dates, locations, witnesses, similarities in tactics. I created a timeline that traced Sheriff Sheila's career path through 3 counties, marking clusters of suspicious arrests in each jurisdiction. The pattern was undeniable to anyone willing to look. But evidence of a pattern was not proof of wrongdoing. I needed concrete evidence, something that could not be dismissed as coincidence or conspiracy theory. Sheriff Sheila had been careful to leave no traces, no witnesses, no smoking guns. Or had she? The more I investigated, the more I noticed a critical flaw in her methodology. She was arrogant. She believed herself untouchable, and people who consider themselves above accountability make mistakes. In my garage, I transformed a back storage room into an investigation headquarters. Maps covered the walls, photos connected with string, notes arranged chronologically. I felt like a character from a crime thriller, except this was my life, not entertainment. Late one night, staring at the evidence board, I identified the connection that had eluded me. In each case, there had been a preliminary visit before the discovery of contraband. A routine inspection, a friendly check-in, a seemingly casual interaction, just like my own experience. Sheriff Sheila never struck without first surveying her target, and that predictable behavior could become her undoing. If I could document her next setup from beginning to end, I might have a chance at exposing her. But to catch a predator, I would need to make myself bait, and I would need help from someone with technical expertise that I lacked. Leo Duncan had been my roommate during my brief attempt at community college. While I had dropped out to pursue mechanic certification, Leo had gone on to build a successful media production company in the city, 60 miles from Millfield. We had stayed in loose contact over the years, exchanging occasional messages and meeting for beers when he passed through town. I drove to his studio on a Wednesday, paranoid that I was being followed. The sleek glass building contrasted sharply with my oil-stained work clothes. Leo's surprise at my unannounced visit turned to concern as I explained my situation. "This sounds insane," he said after I finished, running a hand through his beard. "Like something from a bad crime show." "I know how it sounds," I admitted. "That is why I need evidence no one can dismiss." Leo's expertise was in documentary filmmaking and commercial production. His equipment was professional grade: high-definition cameras, directional microphones, sophisticated editing software. More importantly, he had access to discrete recording devices that would not be detected in casual inspection. "If what you are saying is true, this woman is dangerous," Leo warned, packing his office. "You realize that, right? She carries a gun and has the legal authority to use it." I nodded grimly. I realize that every time I see her patrol car drive past my shop, but staying quiet has not made me safer. It has made me a victim. After hours of discussion and planning, Leo agreed to help. The next day, he arrived at my garage in an unmarked van, equipment hidden in toolboxes and supply crates. We worked through the night, installing hidden cameras with overlapping fields of view throughout my property. "These are motion-activated and wirelessly transmit to this secure server," Leo explained, setting up a small computer in my office closet. "Even if the cameras are discovered, the footage will be preserved off-site." We placed microphones strategically, near doors, in the garage bays, beside my desk. The entire system was undetectable without specialized equipment. My shop had become the most thoroughly monitored building in Millfield. "Now we need to create a reason for her to return," I said, surveying our work. Leo frowned. "You want to attract the attention of someone trying to frame you. Most people would be trying to avoid that." "I am done hiding," I replied. "If she wants a target, I will give her one she cannot resist." The following week, I implemented what Leo called Operation Honeypot. I arranged for several expensive vehicle parts to be delivered to my shop, high-end components that would be visible from outside. I placed empty boxes labeled medical supplies prominently near my workbench. I made sure word circulated that I was working on something big despite my legal troubles. The bait was set. Now I needed only to wait. 3 days later, Sheriff Sheila took it. Her patrol car pulled up outside my garage shortly after noon. I was allegedly out on an errand, but in reality, I was parked across the street, watching remotely through my phone as multiple camera feeds captured her arrival. She did not knock or announce herself. After confirming no one was visible inside, she simply entered, hand resting casually on her holster. The microphones picked up her footsteps as she moved systematically through my space. "My God," Leo whispered beside me in the surveillance vehicle. "She is not even pretending to have a warrant." We watched as Sheriff Sheila examined the medical supply boxes, opening each one carefully with gloved hands. She inspected under workbenches, behind shelving units, even checking air vents. Her movements were practiced, efficient. This was clearly not her first illegal search. Most damning of all, she took photographs with her personal phone, documenting the layout of my shop. In one area, she paused to examine the lock on my supply cabinet, testing it discreetly. After 15 minutes, she departed as silently as she had entered, leaving no sign of her presence. But unlike her previous visits, this one had been captured in perfect high-definition video and crystal-clear audio. "We got her," Leo breathed, staring at the footage already backing up to his secure server. "This is beyond unprofessional. This is criminal." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a cold certainty that the game had only just begun. The footage proved she had conducted an illegal search, yes. But that alone would not undo the damage to my reputation or clear my name of drug charges. "This is just the first step," I said, my resolve hardening. "We need to document a complete pattern, and then we need to make sure everyone sees it." Little did I know that Sheriff Sheila was already planning her countermove, one that would put everything I had left at risk. The gloves were off. 3 days after I caught Sheriff Sheila trespassing on my property, an official county vehicle pulled into my lot. A man in a pressed uniform approached with a clipboard. My stomach dropped. This was retaliation. "Mitchell's Auto Repair?" he asked, not bothering to extend his hand. "Department of Environmental Services. We received reports of improper waste disposal on these premises." I maintained composure, though anger burned in my throat. "I have been in business for 15 years. I recycle all fluids and dispose of waste according to state regulations." The inspector smirked, a familiar smirk, the same one Sheila wore when she planted evidence in my truck. "That remains to be seen," he said, walking past me without permission. For 2 hours, this man violated every corner of my shop. He checked drainage systems, storage containers, even the staff bathroom. And just as he was leaving, he handed me a citation. $2,000 for violations that did not exist. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the pink slip. My hands shook. This was only the beginning. The citation came with a court date 30 days away. But I knew Sheila. She would not wait a month to strike again. She did not even wait 24 hours. The next morning, a zoning inspector appeared. A thin man with thick glasses claimed my garage violated 3 municipal codes that had never been enforced in the 15 years I had operated. "Your signage exceeds allowable dimensions. Your customer parking area lacks proper markings. And your operation may be encroaching on residential zoning boundaries," he declared, writing furiously on his clipboard. "These regulations have never been enforced before," I protested. He did not look up. "Sheriff Sheila has encouraged all departments to maintain stricter oversight of local businesses for community safety." The message was clear. She was coming after my livelihood, but she was only getting started. That evening, my landlord called. Mr. Peterson had rented me this building for over a decade without complaint. Now his voice sounded strained, uncomfortable. "Listen, I received some concerning calls today," he said. "The sheriff's office mentioned your property might be involved in ongoing investigations. They suggested I review our lease agreement." "Mr. Peterson, this is harassment," I explained. "Sheriff Sheila planted evidence in my vehicle. She is retaliating because I am gathering evidence against her. The silence on the line lasted too long. I cannot get involved in legal matters, he finally said. But you are becoming a problem tenant. I have to consider my other properties, my reputation in town. I hung up feeling the walls closing in. Sheila was cutting off my options one by one, but the worst was yet to come. 2 nights later, I received an alert from my security system at 2:13 a.m. Someone had broken into the shop. I called the county police, not the local sheriff. By the time I arrived, the damage was done. The glass front door was shattered, but nothing of value was missing. No tools, no equipment, no cash from the register. The only casualty was my office computer, smashed beyond repair, and my surveillance backup drives were gone. The county officer took my statement and photographed the scene. As he was leaving, he leaned in close. "This does not look like a regular break-in," he said quietly. "No theft, targeted destruction of electronics. Have you made any enemies recently?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Just one, your colleague, Sheriff Sheila." He nodded almost imperceptibly. "Be careful," he whispered, then walked to his cruiser. Standing in my vandalized shop, glass crunching under my boots, I made a decision. This was not just about clearing my name anymore. This was about stopping her before she destroyed someone else. I had gathered evidence, documented patterns, recorded encounters, but Sheila had power, connections, and the badge to shield her. I needed something bigger, something she could not intimidate, fine, or break into, something public. I pulled out my phone and called Leo. When he answered, groggy from sleep, I did not apologize for the late hour. "We need to go bigger," I said. "A court case is not enough. We need to put her on trial in the court of public opinion, where she cannot control the outcome." "What are you thinking?" Leo asked. "A broadcast, live television. Every piece of evidence, every victim's story aired where everyone can see it, before she can destroy any more evidence." The line went quiet, then Leo spoke, fully awake now. "That is extremely risky, but it might be our only shot." As dawn broke over my damaged shop, I knew there was no turning back. Sheila had declared war, and I was about to bring the battle to her doorstep and to every television in the county. We called our plan Operation Truth Files. For the next 3 weeks, Leo and I worked tirelessly, transforming his small production studio into a war room. Whiteboards covered with timelines, walls plastered with photographs and transcripts, computer screens filled with video clips showing Sheila in various acts of misconduct. "The strength of this broadcast will be in the numbers," Leo explained as we sorted through footage. "One accusation can be dismissed. 5, 10, 20 stories with documentation, that becomes undeniable." The former deputy who had contacted me agreed to an on-camera interview. James Harlow had served 8 years in the department before questioning Sheila's methods. His termination papers cited insubordination and failure to uphold department standards. The truth was far darker. "She asked me to plant evidence on 3 separate occasions," James said during our pre-interview in a secluded motel room. "When I refused the 3rd time, she fabricated complaints against me. I was gone within a week." His testimony was explosive, but James feared retaliation against his family. We agreed to film him in shadow, voice altered. Protection was our priority. "We need more voices," I told Leo. "More people willing to speak." Finding them proved easier than expected. One victim led to another. The mother who lost custody of her children after Sheila claimed to find prescription drugs illegally obtained. The farmer accused of manufacturing explosives when Sheila reinterpreted his fertilizer storage. The gas station owner hit with gambling charges after refusing to donate to Sheila's departmental fundraiser. Each person I interviewed shared the same fear. Each had lost something: reputation, money, freedom, family. And each agreed to tell their story, provided we protected their identities. Night after night, we edited footage, blurred faces, distorted voices, and synchronized timelines. The picture that emerged was damning. Sheila had systematically targeted individuals who challenged her authority or refused her demands. The pattern was clear, the evidence overwhelming. "We need distribution," Leo said one evening as we reviewed our final cuts. A platform she cannot shut down. I had already considered this problem. Local media would be too afraid to touch the story. Online platforms could be blocked or removed through legal threats. We needed something immediate and undeniable. Channel 7, I suggested. They broadcast a weekly community spotlight, live and unedited. Leo raised an eyebrow. You think they would risk it? Their producer, Michelle Kwan, has been investigating corruption stories for years. This would be her biggest break. The meeting with Michelle took place in a coffee shop 2 counties away. I brought a sample of our evidence, just enough to prove credibility without revealing our full hand. Her eyes widened as she reviewed the materials. This is explosive, Michelle whispered, but live broadcast carries enormous legal risks for the station. That is precisely why it must be live, I argued. Pre-recorded gives Sheila time to obtain injunctions, threaten witnesses, destroy evidence. Live means the truth gets out before she can stop it. Michelle stared into her coffee. I would need approval from station executives. They will require indemnification agreements from all participants. We go unedited, I insisted. No filters, no delays, no corporate censorship. After 2 days of negotiations, Channel 7 agreed. They offered their community spotlight segment, Friday night at 8:00 p.m. Not prime time, but still viewed by thousands across the county. The agreement was simple, 30 minutes of uninterrupted airtime. All participants would sign liability waivers. The station would announce the segment as Community Perspectives to provide legal distance. As the broadcast date approached, our final challenge emerged. How to ensure Sheila herself would watch and be unable to interfere before the full story aired. The solution came from an unexpected source, Sheila's ego. Sheriff Sheila Blake will be recognized for outstanding community service at this Friday's Chamber of Commerce dinner, read the newspaper announcement. The dinner would run from 7:00 to 9:30 p.m., overlapping perfectly with our broadcast time. She will be surrounded by community leaders unable to leave without drawing attention, I noted. And they all have phones. Someone will show her the broadcast as it happens. 2 days before airtime, I received an anonymous text message. Storage Unit 217, Lakeside Complex. Key under mat. More evidence inside. Leo and I approached the unit cautiously. Inside, we found a cardboard box containing police dashcam footage, internal department memos, and personal notebooks, all documenting Sheila's systematic abuse of power. A note attached reads simply, "Not everyone with a badge supports corruption." On the evening of the broadcast, I stood in Channel 7's small studio, 10 chairs filled with disguised witnesses, video monitors prepared to display evidence. My heart pounded in my chest as the floor director counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2. The red light blinked on. There was no turning back now. The screen illuminated at precisely 8:00 p.m. A simple title card appeared, Sheriff Sheila, The Truth Exposed. Michelle Kwan, wearing her standard blazer and professional smile, faced the camera. Good evening. Tonight, Channel 7 presents a special community segment featuring allegations against local law enforcement. The following content represents the perspectives of community members and has not been independently verified by this station. The legal disclaimer complete, Michelle turned to me. Our guest tonight is Daniel Mitchell, owner of Mitchell's Auto Repair. Mr. Mitchell, you claim Sheriff Sheila Blake has engaged in systematic corruption. What evidence supports these allegations? My mouth felt dry. Thousands were watching. My future, and the futures of everyone brave enough to join me, hung on what happened in the next 30 minutes. I was arrested 3 months ago for possession of methamphetamine allegedly found in my vehicle, I began. Drugs I never purchased, never used, and never possessed. They appeared after Sheriff Sheila conducted an unauthorized search of my truck. Behind me, the monitor displayed footage from my garage security cameras. Sheila entering without permission, opening my truck door, reaching into her pocket, then into my glove compartment. The evidence was unmistakable. But my story is not unique, I continued. Sheriff Blake has systematically targeted citizens who challenged her authority or refused her demands. The broadcast shifted to our first witness, a silhouette against a blue background, voice digitally altered but words crystal clear. "I served as deputy under Sheriff Blake for 8 years," the figure stated. "3 times she instructed me to plant evidence on suspects. When I refused the 3rd time, she fabricated complaints against me. I lost my career, my pension, and nearly my family." One by one, the witnesses shared their stories. The mother separated from her children. The business owner facing bankruptcy after false charges. Each testimony building upon the last, constructing an undeniable pattern. Midway through the broadcast, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Sheriff just saw broadcast on someone's phone at dinner. She's furious. Deputies dispatched to station." I nodded to Michelle, our prearranged signal to accelerate the timeline. We moved to our strongest evidence. "This footage was recorded from officially issued police equipment," Michelle explained as the screen displayed dashcam video. Sheriff Sheila appeared in the frame, speaking to a deputy outside the camera's intended range. "I don't care if there's no probable cause," her voice rang clearly. "Find something, anything, I want him gone." Another clip followed, Sheila in her office speaking on the phone. "Judge Morris, I need that warrant today. No evidence yet, but I will have it by the time we execute. Yes, I understand constitutional requirements, but this is different." The broadcast continued relentlessly. Financial records showing irregular deposits to Sheila's personal accounts following high-profile arrests. Testimony from a dispatcher describing how Sheila directed patrols specifically to target political opponents. Audio recordings of threats made to business owners who refused to display her campaign materials. Halfway through, Michelle handed me a note. "Phones overwhelming station. Mayor calling. State police notified." The truth was spreading faster than Sheila could contain it. Across town, in bars and living rooms, people watched in stunned silence. Some recorded the broadcast on their phones. Others called friends and family. "Turn on Channel 7, now." As we approached our final segment, the studio door burst open. 2 deputies entered, badges drawn. "By order of the Sheriff's Department, this broadcast must cease immediately," the senior officer announced. Michelle stood firm. "We are exercising our First Amendment rights. This is a live broadcast. Any interference will be witnessed by thousands." The deputies hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. The cameras kept rolling, now capturing this attempted suppression in real time. "You have a choice," I said directly to the officers. "Continue serving a corrupt sheriff or stand with the community you swore to protect." Long seconds passed. Then, without a word, the deputies retreated. As the broadcast entered its final minutes, I addressed the camera directly. "To Sheriff Sheila Blake, who is undoubtedly watching, your reign of intimidation ends tonight. To the citizens who have suffered under her abuse of power, you are not alone. And to state and federal authorities, the evidence presented tonight is only the beginning. Complete documentation has been delivered to multiple agencies and news organizations." The broadcast concluded with Michelle providing contact information for state police investigators and the FBI field office. As the red light dimmed, signaling we were off air, the studio erupted in emotional release. Witnesses embraced. Crew members applauded. My phone exploded with notifications. Outside the station, a crowd had gathered, people with handwritten signs, "Justice for all and no more corruption." When I emerged, they cheered. Strangers patted my back. A woman with tears in her eyes grasped my hand. "My brother was one of her victims," she whispered. "Thank you for being brave." That night, social media erupted. Local news interrupted regular programming with breaking updates. The broadcast had been recorded and shared thousands of times. The story spread beyond county lines, reaching state and national outlets. In the pre-dawn hours, a press release arrived from the Sheriff's Department. Sheila's face appeared briefly on screen, eyes hard, voice steady but strained. "The allegations broadcast last night are categorically false," she stated. A disgruntled individual with a personal vendetta has fabricated evidence and manipulated public sentiment. I remain committed to serving this community with integrity. But her words rang hollow. The evidence was too comprehensive, the pattern too clear. The dam had broken, and the flood of truth was only beginning. Standing in my living room, watching her denial on the morning news, I felt no satisfaction, only relief. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. No more whispers, no more fear. The truth was out. And I was no longer a suspected criminal. I was the witness who broke the silence. 48 hours after the broadcast, black SUVs with state government plates appeared outside the county administration building. Men and women in crisp suits carried boxes and computer equipment inside. The official investigation had begun. The state attorney general's office issued a brief statement. In response to serious allegations of misconduct within the sheriff's department of Oak Ridge County, a formal inquiry has been initiated. Sheriff Sheila Blake has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The suspension came during an emergency session of the county board. The vote was unanimous, even from members who had once been Sheila's staunchest supporters. Politics, it seemed, could not withstand the weight of evidence and public outrage. 2 deputies resigned the following day. No explanations offered, no statements given. They cleared their desks under the watchful eyes of state investigators, surrendering badges and service weapons before departing through the back entrance. Downtown, the community response manifested physically. Someone had spray-painted "Justice for the Framed" across the brick wall opposite the courthouse. Rather than removing it, the building owner announced it would remain as a reminder of how power corrupts. My phone rang constantly, reporters seeking exclusive interviews, citizens sharing their own stories of encounters with Sheila, former friends offering belated support. I directed the reporters to my lawyer and thanked the citizens for their courage. On Thursday morning, as I attempted to repair the damage to my shop, a black town car pulled into my lot. The driver opened the rear door and Mayor Wilson stepped out. He approached slowly, hands clasped before him, eyes downcast. "Mr. Mitchell," he began, voice uncharacteristically subdued, "I have come to offer an official apology." I set down my tools and wiped my hands on a rag. For what specifically, Mayor Wilson? For Sheila? Or for how quickly the town believed her lies? He winced. For both. And for my own failure to investigate earlier complaints about the sheriff's conduct. There were signs I chose to ignore. We stood in uncomfortable silence. This man had attended Sheila's fundraisers, had praised her tough approach to law enforcement, had dismissed earlier concerns as disgruntled criminals seeking excuses. "The county will be dropping all charges against you," he continued, "and we wish to discuss appropriate compensation for damages to your reputation and business." "And the others?" I pressed. "Those who lost businesses, custody of children, years of their lives." The mayor nodded gravely. "A review board is being established. All cases involving Sheriff Blake will be re-examined." As he turned to leave, he paused. "Why did you not come to me directly with your concerns?" The question reflected how little he understood. Because the system protected her. Every institution, including your office, was either complicit or willfully blind. That evening, state investigators arrived at my shop. 2 women in professional attire introduced themselves as special prosecutors. They spent 4 hours recording my testimony, examining evidence, and documenting the damage from the break-in. "This case extends beyond corruption," the senior investigator explained. "We are looking at evidence tampering, false imprisonment, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and possibly organized racketeering." "How many others has she targeted?" I asked. "We have identified 23 cases with similar patterns. That number grows daily as more people come forward." The investigators departed with copies of all my evidence. As they were leaving, the junior prosecutor turned back. "What you did took remarkable courage," she said quietly. "Most people would have accepted the charges or left town." I shook my head. "I had no choice, she left me none." The following week brought the first formal charges against Sheila. The press conference was held on the courthouse steps. The state attorney general outlined a 12-count indictment including evidence manipulation, abuse of power, and witness intimidation. "No one stands above the law," she declared, "especially those entrusted to enforce it." As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, I stood at the back of the crowd. An observer now, not a participant. The system that had failed us was finally responding, not because it wanted to, but because it had no alternative. That night, I walked through town for the first time without looking over my shoulder. People nodded in recognition. Some offered quiet thanks. Others simply nodded with respect. Outside the diner, Mary Ellison, the mother who had lost custody of her children, approached me with tears in her eyes. "My hearing is next week," she said. "The judge is reviewing my case with the new evidence. I might get my bobbies back." In that moment, standing under the flickering street light with this woman whose life had been shattered by the same corruption that had targeted me, I understood the true impact of what had begun. This was not just about justice for me. It was about restoring faith in a system that had been poisoned. Truth, once revealed, rippled outward in ways no one could control, and the ripples were only beginning. The courtroom fell silent as Sheriff Sheila Blake was led in, hands cuffed before her. Gone was the crisp uniform, the confident stance, the intimidating glare. In a standard-issue orange jumpsuit, she looked smaller somehow. Human, vulnerable. 3 months had passed since the broadcast. 3 months of investigations, depositions, and revelations. The state had built its case methodically, uncovering abuses of power dating back to Sheila's first days in office. Judge Elena Martinez read the charges in a steady voice. Tampering with evidence, conspiracy to violate civil rights, obstruction of justice, abuse of official capacity, filing false reports, witness intimidation. Sheila stood expressionless, but I saw the truth in her eyes, fear. The same fear she had instilled in so many others. The wheel had turned. When the prosecution called me to testify, I approached the witness stand with steady steps. The oath was administered. The questions began. "Mr. Mitchell, please describe the events of June 17th, when Sheriff Blake first visited your establishment." I recounted every detail. The unannounced inspection, the suspicious behavior, the arrest that followed. My voice remained calm, factual. This was not about revenge. This was about truth. "Did you have any prior conflicts with Sheriff Blake that might explain her actions?" "None," I answered. "My only offense was refusing to display her campaign materials during her election." The defense attorney attempted to discredit me, suggesting financial troubles had led me to drug trafficking, implying the broadcast was an elaborate attempt to escape justice, painting me as a manipulator of media and public sentiment. But evidence does not lie. The surveillance footage played in court, showing Sheila's unauthorized search of my vehicle. The audio recordings of her threatening deputies who questioned her methods. Financial records revealing suspicious deposits following high-profile arrests. Other witnesses followed. The former deputy describing direct orders to plant evidence. The clerk who was instructed to falsify reports. The judge who received misleading information to secure warrants. Each testimony another stone in the wall of justice being built. Throughout the trial, the gallery remained full. Community members witnessing the system correct itself. Journalists documenting every word. State officials observing the process they had initiated. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours. The verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. At sentencing, Judge Martinez addressed Sheila directly. "The authority granted to law enforcement is a sacred trust, one you systematically violated. Your actions not only harmed individual citizens, but damaged public faith in the very institutions meant to protect them. The court sentences you to 12 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 8 years. As Sheila was led away, our eyes met briefly. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Justice had spoken. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust toward me, questions shouted from all directions. I answered few, directing most to my attorney. This chapter was closing. It was time to rebuild. And rebuild I did. My shop reopened with a line of customers extending into the street. Many brought small gifts, bottles of wine, home-baked goods, handwritten cards, the community's way of making amends. The sign above my door now read Mitchell's Auto Repair, honest work, fair prices. Same as always, but now those words carried deeper meaning. The broadcast that exposed Sheila went viral nationally. Media outlets picked up the story, exploring themes of small-town corruption and citizen journalism. Leo's production received a regional Emmy nomination for investigative reporting. Most importantly, the damage Sheila had inflicted began to heal. Cases were reviewed, convictions overturned, families reunited. The new acting sheriff, a 30-year veteran of state law enforcement, initiated department-wide reforms including mandatory body cameras and civilian oversight. 6 months after the trial, I received an unexpected visitor. James Harlow, the former deputy who had first contacted me anonymously, arrived at my shop in civilian clothes. "I have been offered my position back," he said, "with back pay and an apology." "Will you take it?" I asked. James nodded. Someone needs to rebuild trust from the inside. Might as well be someone who remembers what happens when power goes unchecked. As we shook hands, I realized how much had changed. The fear that had permeated our town had lifted. People spoke freely again, questioned authority when necessary, held institutions accountable. That evening, I stood outside my shop watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant oranges and purples. A customer asked why I had never considered leaving town after all that happened. The answer came easily. This is my home, always has been. I fix things that are broken. That is what I do. She smiled. You fixed more than cars this time. I nodded, feeling the weight of those words. I had entered this struggle simply to clear my name, to prove my innocence. But somewhere along the way, it became about something larger, about standing against corruption when retreat would have been easier, about using truth as a shield and a sword. I am not a hero. I am a mechanic who refused to be framed, a citizen who demanded justice, a neighbor who helped fix what was broken in our community. And that, perhaps, is the most important repair I will ever make.